Yeah, it was interesting that I have a similar scenario where I live in Arkansas, which is a fairly rural area, and our economy, our real estate market lags behind most of the rest of the country. It doesn't
Right.
move as much to a degree, but when something happens, it affects California, New York, and Florida really quickly. It doesn't affect us for a while, and so you can almost see this ripple coming at you. Sounds like with you, you do the same thing. You have this like 30-day like notification. It's like the US Fed just made a change. Like we better like it's coming. We know what it's coming. Like let's start thinking about the implications of that.
Correct. Yeah. And
Mm,
and Toronto, which is our biggest market, and one of the broker owners of one of our brokerages is up there, and he warned us 6 months it'll get to Windsor, and he wasn't wrong. The problem was is
wow.
there's no real evidence of it until it shows up. It's sort of like, yeah, they tell you there's a tidal wave coming, like you just mentioned, like that kind of thing, and but you can't see it. And then when you can see it, that's too late
It's
because
too
once you
late.
can see it,
It's too
you're gonna
late.
try and run, but you can't outrun that thing. It's gonna get you. So
Yeah.
again, it's tough because if you listen to people, the hard part is I'll say this: people kept saying the bubble is going to burst. They said it since 15 when the first market shift really
Yeah,
happened
it
in
did.
Canada, and it didn't, and it didn't, and it didn't. And so eventually they're going to be right. Like if you keep saying the same thing forever, you're going to be right. Just like right now, well, we're in recovery, the market's going to rise. If I keep saying that, eventually I'm going to be right. The
Yep.
truth is not even like I talked to him after. He said, I didn't see this. He said, if I would have seen this, he knew what I was doing. He thought it was risky, but he is a get more on that side. But he said he would have basically told like made me not do it. Right. Like if he knew what was coming, he would never have let me put
Right.
myself in that position. He just thought I'd be cautious. He didn't think it was risky, but it wasn't like, I'm going to die here, right? Like if you know
Sure.
your friend's going to die, you're going to make sure you do a lot more to make sure they don't stay standing there when you think, oh, the worst case scenario is going to, he might get hurt. Okay. Like he wants to be an idiot, make that jump on it, like try and do this trick or something and he hurts himself. Oh, well, but if you're going to jump off a cliff and die, like
Mhm.
I think
Well,
people would have a better response.
better sense of it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's talk maybe about now looking ahead, not having a crystal clear crystal ball here. We get the sense that the interest rates are going to be fairly flat for a while, and if anything, they may actually lower
Hmm.
in the sometime this year. We're not sure when. And you're probably reassessing the market, and you're kind of getting your ducks in a row for how to make some moves in the market. Where are your thoughts? What's your current strategy?
So my current strategy with anybody who's looking to invest is I would access the market if it's going to work now. So if the model works now with the current interest rates, with the current project, with the current, requirement of what you're looking to get on the other side, like a perfect burr is very difficult.
Yeah, it is.
There's just hard parts to do in this current economy. But
Yep.
if you can get the metrics of whatever numbers you're comfortable with to work in today's
Mhm.
market, it's a great time to enter because I do believe the odds are we're going to see the market rise. We're going to see interest rates come down and the
Yep.
market's going to rise. Now, if you're in a flip mentality, man, you better be sure, right? Like I still think with the unless you can make the flip work in again the exact same manner, where you're gonna buy it, close it, and you're in a 90-day window, maybe a 120-day window between the day
Mhm.
you close, like the day you make your offer, not the day you close that deal, the day you make your offer and the day it's sold again. I'd want to be in the same quarter currently because I think in 3 months, unlike last time where I spanned it out, right? I bought in February and closed one in September, right? Or that one was April, but still you want to be, in my opinion, in the current economy, a bit more condensed so you can stay a little bit more agile and active. If
Yep.
for any reason, again, there's all things brewing in the world, there's all kinds of conversations. What does it mean if China, the US, and Russia, and all the things going on?
Yeah.
I just want to be in a faster in and out in this economy at the moment because I just think there's a lot of factors you can't control. But if you're going to hold on to it for 10 years, honestly, outside of catastrophic failure, which means it doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter where you put your money right
Right.
now, it wouldn't matter
Yep.
what you do.
Right.
I think if you're looking at a 10-year hold and it's cash flow neutral up here because we have the 5-year fixed, one of the things they say is, you date the rate up here, right? So odds are if you're getting a 5.5 or 6% rate today in 5 years, it will be lower. It just most likely the economy's strong, the overall thing, even if it's only at 4 or 3.5, like it may never go back down to 2 and 1, and maybe you should never
Sure.
been there to begin with.
Right. Right.
But if you can get your stuff to work now at 6% and it's going to hold out, six is the overall average over time between 4 and 6. So just model really well. Make sure you're putting those safety perimeters in and hire an expert in the area who knows how to help you. And then, like for me in this market, the best thing to do is add the space. So whether that's going to be a student rental in the basement of a property, you rent the main floor out, you do something a bit different than you would normally, where you could just have one tenant. Because of course, one tenant's easier to manage. But in this market, with the economy, I do generally recommend to most of my people to get into the hold, make the auxiliary unit. You don't have to use it forever, but in the
Yep.
meantime, while you want to leverage up cash flow, you might have a bit more tenant frustration if you have,
Yep.
7 people living in a property instead of 4,
Sure.
but you're going to be able to make sure that now, and all I say to my tenants is the same thing, is to say, would you guys like to have a home? Because I get it's not as convenient as it was. And for your cost to stay down, I need to be able to use this space this way. Because if I
Yep.
don't, and I just rent it to you, then I have to rent it to you at the same, like, it's cash flow, right? If you're in business, you can't sell something for less than you pay for it. Otherwise, you're probably not going to survive very long.
Not for long.
So,
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense that, as an owner of a asset, the more units you can rent out, the greater income that you receive.
correct.
And so making use of these kind of special condition properties that have opportunities for ADUs or the basement and do you do all those long term, or do you do any of those midterm or short term rentals like Airbnb?
So we do have the battery plant local right now. So there is stuff that we're doing with short-term out-of-town workers because we
Yep.
have the battery plant, the bridge. There's some major industry going on. We
Yep.
also have the university and the college. So from the perspective of highest level of cash flow, that works. Again, with Airbnb, like anything, there's a lot of regulation coming in around it.
Yep.
So you're flirting with all of that. Like even in renovating property and doing things, there's all kinds of regulations and
Okay.
situations that exist. What you want to do is you want to find if again you got to reassess your risk level, because again, if you do something that works for now, but then the city comes by and says you can't
Right.
continue, right? Everybody knows the odds of that happening are relatively low, but it can. So just know, like, don't just be like, oh, it's worked for 10 years, so it's going to continue to work. They are starting to crack down. They seem to be working on trying to it feels like we have a housing crisis, like we have an inventory problem up here. And I
Sure.
feel like they're just creating more problems by the policies they're creating, which seems like a government thing to do.
It
Because
does.
like we're already in trouble, and so we're going to add issues and make this more difficult than it currently is, and raise the costs on landlords and raise the costs on homeowners, so that
Right.
it's harder to actually create these things like ADUs, these additional dwelling units. The benefit for Windsor, where I live, the cool part is the city itself is very much on board. So if you have the land and the space, there's not a lot of hiccups to
That's
building the
nice.
ADU in the backyard. So there are some cool things that are good. But then they brought in, like, the rental lease agreement. Like the city now has like a rental program where you have to apply with the city and do all this other stuff. Like, so they do one thing for the benefit of everybody, and they then do another thing that creates the complication. And it's like, guys, just
More
right.
bureaucracy. Yeah.
Well, get rid of the bureaucracy. Again, there's always going to be good and bad in everything. You cannot policy out the bad. The bad will
No.
figure out a way to do it anyway. Do you know how I know this? Because they're still existing. All these people who are shady and do the shady thing still find a way to be shady and do the shady thing. And all you're really doing is putting a roadblock in for anybody who is doing it the right way, who is trying to follow the rules, who is trying to do everything. You're just adding more red tape for them. Because the
Hmm.
guys who go through the red tape, well, continue to go through the red tape. The guys that don't, won't. Especially when you make it even worse. So I just think as you look at the overall market economy, I think there's really good options to allow for you to get into some amazing investments. There's great opportunity in Canada. The government's trying to offer money to the cities themselves to allow you to build a fourplex on basically any unit. And I said, if they do that, man, then we're a very old city. So there's a lot of really old, dilapidated properties that, let's say, would sell for 250, 300 grand. The land
Sure.
value beneath almost becomes worth that instantly if you can put up 4 units
Yep. A
on it,
four
right?
unit on
Like,
there.
it's so different how quickly that could change. So there's things that are coming. There are things the government is trying to do that are positive. I'm just against regulatory things that just they clog up the system. I'm good with safety. I'm good with making sure you have the proper, egress windows. If you're going to do a basement, guys, don't make it so your client, if there's a fire down there, they can't escape. That's just rude, right?
Sure.
Like, we all want to, do these renovations in a meaningful way, but to have it take 2 weeks for an inspector to show up to verify things, that's insane, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I've been there, done that. It's painful for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. And that's, some of these things, that's just the nature of being a business owner, is that you have to manage the chaos and all these conflicting rules. in the US and probably even from you guys, we have the federal, state, and local, like
Yeah.
county and city. You
Hmm.
have, I guess you'd call it the country, province, and the city, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm curious, do y'all, in that structure, this is just my own curiosity here, do y'all have counties or do y'all call it something else?
Yeah, no, we're in Essex County. So Windsor is part of Essex County, which is part of
Essex County.
Ontario, which is of
Yeah.
course part of Canada.
And the land records are kept by county?
No, so Windsor is so each township is its own
Uh,
functioning for the purpose of taxes and all of that. And every different. So I live in LaSalle, which is it borders Windsor. Like basically, you wouldn't know you drove into
sure,
LaSalle
it's
if
just
you
like
were
like
driving
a bedroom
through.
community. Yeah.
But my community has different bylaws, a completely different system of operation than Windsor does. And then Windsor has its whole thing. So to do an ADU here is more difficult than if I buy a property across the street. Literally, if I walk out my front door and across the road, I'm in Windsor.
Yeah.
It's really kind
Yeah.
of funny. And so again, knowing that portion of where you're buying and where you're not, who the mayor is. So we're actually going to have one of the mayors on local who's looking at ADUs is a big thing in their
Cool.
portion, not Windsor, but one of the other the counties we've got. And
Yep.
so, and again, so in that, it's really cool because you've got some, again, you have politicians who are all doing different things, they're all trying to figure out this housing thing, right? Because we're still bringing in a lot of immigrants up here for our
Yep.
population size as a country. We're 36 million. We're bringing in, I think we brought in 1.2 million people or something. Like that's just a huge piece to bring into the
Percentage.
country when we're already in a housing situation.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying I don't want to open our doors and bring people, but we should probably make sure we have a roof to put over their head, right? Like, so again, there's those types of things. So I'm really cool to see some of the like again, I'm not against government, I'm against regulation. I want to be very clear about that. I think there's a lot of really good people in the government who do a lot of really good things. And then
Hmm.
there's the bureaucracy of the government that just I don't even think the government likes it. I don't even think they like the
They can't help
bureaucracy.
themselves.
It's just I think it's part of the mechanism that's been built in. And
Yeah.
the issue is as a culture, we've decided that safety and regulation is better than freedom and opportunity. And that's you can only have one or the other. You cannot have both. If the more regulated and safe you make it, the less opportunity and less free it becomes. It's just how we just learned all that through COVID, right? You got as countries and cultures, we just learned what it looks like to choose safety over regulation and what that and the differences and then the
Yeah.
opinions of
You're right.
humans, right? So I don't want to ever be in the spot where I'm the one making those decisions because
Same.
those decisions are above my pay grade and I'm okay with that. But at the
Yep.
same time, it does feel like if we removed some of it, especially in arenas where we need to get to action because we have a population situation where we need to help people get into residential and into homes and doing those things, we should put in some, I would say like the express lanes, right? We have the express lanes. Let's create some express lanes that allow us to do the things we need in the moment. And we can
Yeah.
always, still with integrity, still with those things, but we need to do
Mhm.
something to help get ourselves into a better overall situation.
Yeah, I think we both our countries share very similar problems in that we just have just a complete dearth of affordable housing. It's
Yeah.
just there's a huge shortage, and so multifamily has had a lot of new builds, and so there's been more inventory coming on there. But in the single family space, there's just been very little activity, and it just doesn't make sense financially. I've personally looked into it. It
Mhm.
just doesn't make sense to build affordable housing. Like the numbers just don't shake out, and development is risky, and in order to take that risk, you want to have the potential of some upside. And when there's no upside, what we're forced to do is we go and do luxury housing, which is higher end.
Right.
And in our markets, Dallas, Texas, for example, it's like 550 and up.
Right.
Whereas in affordable housing, like we cannot get a house under $300,000 that we can afford to build.
Yeah, and we're in the same boat. Like we're building condos, and they're like, "Well, condos are still 550, $500,000 and go." I'm like, "Yeah, for
Golly.
something brand new." But again, you have to remember. So add 30%,
30%.
35%.
Yeah.
So three something, right? For
Yeah.
for condos up here, if you're looking at USD, 300, basically 300 US will get you into a brand new built condo in a decent area. Like these are all being built in the better areas of our city. They're not being built in the downtown
No, they're
core.
not.
And the reason for that is there's too much of a density problem for a lot of the downtown core and what it's dealing with already. And unless
Hmm.
you expropriate land, that's the thing. So most of it's being built on the edges of town. And so
Sure.
like where I live in LaSalle, there's been at least 12, if not more, like 12 that I can see go up in the last 2 years, like 12 buildings. We're 24,000 people in LaSalle, 12
Uh-huh.
new condo buildings popping up because again, we have an aging population. The issue is again, they're not affordable. They're not like you can't, if you're making, let's say minimum wage in Canada, which is about 16 bucks an hour, you're making 32 grand a year and you're married. So you have $64,000.
You
Well, if you
still
think
can't
about
qualify.
$300,000 mortgage, or let's say a $400,000 mortgage at 6%, that's $24,000, like
Yeah.
just in interest, not even in the principal. So
Right.
again, I think the only way that I see forward in affordable housing is twofold. One is deregulate and then allow the tiny home. So these Elon Musk type properties,
Yeah.
the build a box, right? Like you pop up a
Yeah.
couple boxes beside each other, you pour a foundation and you pop these boxes up. That becomes the predominant build structure to really, versus trailer parks, right? Basically same concept, modular type properties
Right.
that we can bring in for $250,000 to build let's say a 3-bedroom apartment on the land, right? So the government uses its land because it owns land and helps to build the infrastructure. But let's say all of a sudden those properties, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, all one floor unit, you can pick that up for 300 Canadian, 225 US, or 200 US. At least now that's something affordable, that's new, that's structural, that they don't like. Any affordable housing that I would consider affordable housing is ancient in Windsor, 100 years old at least, built
Right.
between 1900 and basically 1945, 1950. A huge portion of our city is built in that arena. And so with that, like if you could get that, if that's the only thing you can buy, well, then you're dealing with knob and tube wiring, you're dealing with structural issues, you're dealing with just sheer age, right? Like
Yeah.
the fact if you do buy them at that in that thing, they probably still look a little bit like they did back then. You're putting in windows and
A
doors,
lot of
like they're
work. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
there's not that you want to get it so that people can move in. I get it's not going to be like what it was, right? We always want to go back in time. I think the biggest problem as a culture is we're not willing to sacrifice what's necessary to get ahead. We we all had this great run where everyone did well, everyone had housing. It seemed to be good for about 25, 30 years. And then we're in a spot where with the density issues and some of those things, we've got to come up with new and better ideas. I don't want to look like Hong Kong. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I think well, especially in Canada, man, like, do you know how much land we've got? Like,
Yeah.
I think we can find some space to put up some stuff on ground level and give people still a yard and give people, some form of normalcy in that, and driveways and all those things. I think there's a model. I just think, like, I looked into it, and the amount of like planning and the amount of work and the amount of money you have to spend just to find out that you can or can't do it. Like, you're talking about $250,000 to do, let's say, a project of 100 of these, right? Like, we were
Yep.
looking at some land,
Same.
and it's not even sure you're going to be able to do it because you have to do all this pre-work. Where if the government came alongside you and said, okay, we're not going to charge any, like, we'll help, we'll pay for this, and if it works, like, you take, like, here's the hand in hand, right? You
Hmm.
need housing, come alongside. Like you said, everything that's affordable, there's no upside. The government's like, well, we'll give you some money. It's like, yeah, but that's not enough to actually take this risk. Like, the risk is so heavy. Whereas
Yeah.
everybody who has money, which we all agree, you're going to build something for the people who could afford to buy it, not for the people
Of
who
course.
generally can't, because those
Yeah.
people have all these other things that pop up. And it's not because we don't like people, it's because we're
Hmm.
business owners. We get what the market is. And in real estate, no different than I said earlier, it's really hard to bet down. Like, I'm going to do something on the low end. Well, no, I would rather do something at least in the median, if not the higher end, because that's where all of the money tends to sit.
I agree. So before we start with our last few questions, I have one last question for you that I'm just super curious about. I'm looking here at your one sheet that you sent me, and it has a hat with a clover leaf, a 4-leaf
Yep.
clover, and you're wearing a hat right now that has the same thing, just different color, and
Correct.
it says "Live Lucky" if I'm reading it correctly. What's the
Correct.
story there?
So this is a hat that's from golf. And so I picked one up years ago, and live lucky in my sense is hard work. Like, when you think about luck and people say, oh, you're so lucky. It's like, do you have any idea what I've had to do to be lucky? Like, the amount of education, the amount of time, energy, and the
Yeah.
amount of mistakes I've made to be lucky, right? Like, it's all through the experience. And so for me, these hats are fun. It's a big brand. One guy asked me if it was, oh, come on, sorry, his name's escaping me.
Lucky
Big
Charms? Or
no, no, no. He's a big time speaker. Oh,
oh,
Tony Robbins. So
oh,
Tony's
oh,
wearing this
oh.
hat now, and I said, "Oh, it's before Tony even started wearing it. It's been around." And so for me, it's sort of my authenticity. I'm the guy who likes to golf. I show up in shorts and a t-shirt and flip flops. If you meet me in the summertime, that's what I'll look like. If you meet me right
Yep.
now, I do have pants on because I live in Canada,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
still t-shirt, hat, like almost anywhere I go, and who I am is who I am at all times. I'm a highly authentic human. I learn to be more just myself, and people get like, again, I'd rather be the guy at the bar who's just having a regular conversation. I have the education and knowledge behind me,
Yep.
but I am me and I'm not the suit and tie guy. And it doesn't mean I can't do it. I just choose to live my life the way I'm comfortable. And I think that's fair. So yeah, the live
Totally.
lucky has I love the saying because to me, living lucky is live with a purpose, live to look for the opportunity and you'll find it. But if you're always saying, I'm no, everything's hard, this is this, yeah, you're right. You know what? Life is hard. You're absolutely right. Just choose the opportunity. Choose to assume that you're going to get lucky, right? If you're married,
Yep.
sometimes, the odds are not in your favor, but just
Right.
assume maybe, you have way better odds if you show up maybe with like not, I don't want to say expecting, but with the idea that it could happen, the odds that it happens go way up. If you go into it going, oh, then it's likely
Yep.
not, right? Your attitude
Your state's wrong.
really
Yeah.
dictates a lot of your actions, which then dictate the opportunity, which dictate the result. And so that's sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded thing, but that's the understanding that I have of what it means to me. I don't know what it means to the actual owners of the company, but
That's cool. That's cool.
if they like it and if they're listening, yeah, I love your hats, guys.
That's cool.
Black
That's
Clover is
cool.
the company. If anyone wants to buy these hats, they're fun.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure and put that in the show notes. Along with that, talking about just an average guy having conversations, where can people find you?
You can find me here in Windsor. You can find me at jordansilvester.com. That is the website. You can reach out to me at 519-960-0350 if you want to chat direct. You want to talk
Nice.
investing, you want to talk real estate in Ontario, you want to talk about if you're a US citizen wanting to buy up here, or we've got Canadians that are always looking at different places in Florida or Arizona or different spots. Like if you're a realtor listening to this and you want to connect with me there, like there's all kinds of opportunity. So again, you're welcome to reach out. You can text that number as well. And then if you want to see more of me and my hats, feel free to check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and of course YouTube. So those are
All
the
the
those are the,
places.
the profiles you will find me on.
Okay. All right. I'll make sure and grab those links and put them in the show notes so everybody can find you on their channel of choice.
Yep.
And the last question is, what is up next for you? What's going on? Are you got any big trips planned? You got anything new hobbies you're working on? What's going on?
So the next big trip is actually something called Family Reunion. So the company I'm with is Keller Williams, and we call Family Reunion. So 17,000 agents are about to descend here in a week. We'll be flying out on the 22nd of February down to Vegas. Conference starts on the 25th to the 29th. It's just a massive opportunity to get together with a bunch of realtors and learn and grow. And so I have my plan currently is to gain as much knowledge and education of what people are up to up there.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the investors, there's the real estate business builders. It's an unbelievable opportunity to add wealth, and actually Tony Robbins will be speaking there.
Cool.
So that's a cool thing. We had Tim Tebow at an event that was back in August, so that was kind of cool. And so that's the big thing that's coming up for me. It'll be an amazing opportunity to take some download, and then again, the framework of the plan right now is keep growing the social world, getting the message out about investing and investing not only in real estate but in yourself, right?
Hmm.
Like if you invest in yourself, I'll say the more reading you do before you make the first step, the better. And it's not to say don't be fearful, but just educate yourself and talk to really smart people, add amazing people around you.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to leave it. You talk a
Yeah.
lot about relationships and authenticity, and that has come through. So I will leave it at that. Everybody, here's to you leading life complete by design. Thank you so much, Jordan Silvester.